Hey everyone, Flashbangs back here to talk a little bit more college basketball and kind of what happened over the last week since I last posted. I also want to appreciate everyone, all the support on the last video. You know, it's better to have at least some people viewing instead of me just, talking to myself and putting it out there. Sounds a little less weird, maybe a little less sad. That's really up for you. Really make your assumption there. But we had a great weekend of college basketball. Friday night started with St. John's taking out UConn in the Garden. And then you had a thriller in that Duke-UNC matchup in Chapel Hill. Kind of revamped the rivalry a little bit. Seemed a little bit dead over the last couple of years since that Caleb Love took them out in the Final Four. Then we had a great game for Kentucky, another storming comeback win against Tennessee, deja vu all over for the Vols. And then we also had a phenomenal game between Michigan State and Illinois at MSU. And then we also had a great game by Houston going on the road and winning at BYU. And then just another game that was absolutely awesome, probably one of the best college basketball games I've seen in a while. Which is really cool. The MAC and Sunbelt over the weekend on Saturday, they had a little challenge between the two conferences, which I always think is cool, especially between two mid-major conferences like that. You had a game between UMass and Coastal Carolina that was absolutely batshit crazy. Game went into triple overtime. There was just the clutch shot making happening all over the floor. It was just a thriller of a game. If you have a chance, I would say you got to go check out at least the highlights of that game because that was an awesome watch. But today here, just wanted to talk about the top 16 reveal that's going to happen Saturday, February 21st, just to get a little prediction going, kind of how the College Football Committee has their rankings. The selection committee will release their top 16 teams, which is just the top 4 seeds in each region. So we're going to do a little prediction of how it's going to look, or at least how it stands in my eyes right now. So we'll start off in the West region first. All right, so looking at the West region, we got the number 1 overall seed, the Arizona Wildcats. I don't think there's too much argument for that. They have currently 8-0 record in quad 1 games. I think this next about 3.5 weeks are going to really show you how good the Wildcats are, and see if they are really that number 1 overall team. They play at Kansas tonight. Then they play against Texas Tech on Saturday. Following Texas Tech, they play home against BYU. And they travel to play at Houston, so that's 3 straight ranked games. They get an at Baylor game, could be a sneaky spot in between. Then you get Kansas again, this time at home. Then you get Iowa State again after Kansas, and then finish it off at Colorado. So they play 6 of their next 7 games against ranked opponents, with 4 of those games being top 10 matchups. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how Arizona performs over the next couple weeks and see if they are really they will prove if they are the number 1 overall team. Then following them, we got Nebraska. I have them 8th overall here, so the worst 2 seed, but Nebraska has been good this year. They followed up starting off 20-0, back-to-back losses, but have rebounded pretty well. They get Purdue tomorrow. They're 6-4 in quad 1 games right now, so they have been really excellent in those kind of games. Haven't dropped any bad losses so far, so they've been excellent throughout. Then, interestingly enough, we get Florida. Florida's a very odd team. They struggled a bit at the beginning of the year. I think their guards have really started to find their rhythm. Their bigs have been playing phenomenally as of late, and they've just been kind of crushing teams with their last 2 games, crushing Alabama and then crushing A&M to take sole possession of the SEC right now. So I have them slotted in the 3 seed there. They've won 3 in a row. They're 6-4 in quad 1 games. The one knock being they're 5-2 in quad 2. So those 2 quad 2 losses aren't great, but they are red hot. Just keep an eye on the Gators through the rest of the season, see if they can continue to rise. And then finally wrapping up the West, we got Gonzaga as the 4 seed. Gonzaga has been very good this year. Their only losses have come to Michigan, and then most recently they took a loss at Portland. That loss is a quad 3 loss for them, so that definitely is going to hurt them down the stretch here. There's not going to be really teams in this top 16 that has a quad 3L, but they have a chance to pick up another quad 1 game here. This Saturday, they play at Santa Clara, which will be for first place in the West Coast Conference. So that's going to be a really good game to watch out for, and especially for Santa Clara, a big game for them to try to get in that large bid possibly for them as well. So it's going to be a great game to watch. Then moving on, we get the Midwest region, now in the Midwest region, we get the number 1 seed Michigan. I got them as the number 2 overall team here. Michigan is 8-0 in quad 1 games. Their 1 loss coming at home to Wisconsin counts as a quad 2 loss. Wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad loss, but they have been phenomenal. A lot of those quad 1 games have been blowouts, especially out in Vegas when they were just straight up just dominating teams out there. We don't really have too many games upcoming next week, though. They play at Purdue, and then they get Duke and DC, so going to be an interesting week for Michigan there to see what they are able to do, really, and see if they can continue to kind of keep their reins on that number 1 seed. Next up, we get Iowa State here. This was kind of a tough call. I was kind of flip-flopping back and forth between Iowa State and Houston as the potential 1 seed. I went with Houston here, and we have Iowa State as the 5. Good thing is they both have yet to play each other, so especially in the Big 12, things will most likely really just be able to work themselves out over there. But so far, Iowa State 5-2 right now in quad 1 games. They've been very, very good as of late, and their upcoming schedule, just like I talked about with Arizona, it's going to be a little tough. Tomorrow they play at TCU. TCU especially has been feisty at home, so that should be one to watch out for. Then Saturday they get Kansas at home. Then they get Houston at home, then at BYU, at Utah, and then home to Texas Tech, and then at Arizona. So the Big 12 has loaded up for some very fire games coming up towards the end of February, or all throughout February. There's going to be some great basketball being played in the Big 12 this month. So it's going to be very exciting to watch. Then at 3, we get Purdue. They have been a very streaky team right now. They had a really close win at home against Oregon. I know Oregon finally had Biddle back, but the turnovers continue to be an issue for Purdue. I think it's something they should be able to clean up. It's just a little uncharacteristic of Braden Smith of the last 2 years, maybe a little more characteristic of his, freshman year, where he's a lot more turnover prone. But I think that's something that they'll have to try to figure out a little bit. Their next upcoming schedule, they play Nebraska tomorrow on the road, and they get at Iowa on the road, which will be a great game on Saturday. And then they get Michigan at home. Then they play Indiana again, hoping to avenge that game. That should be another great game that continues to happen between these Indiana-Purdue games. And then they get Michigan State as well. So Purdue has a chance to really kind of bounce back with some key wins with this upcoming schedule that they have. And then we got Texas Tech, who lost 2 in a row after losing to UCF. They lost to Kansas. They were missing Christian Anderson in that game, so you're not going to fault them too much. When a team is missing their best guard and playing a team like Kansas, it's a little hard for them to, kind of pull out a close game win there. Guards really control the game, especially in college basketball. But they did bounce back against West Virginia yesterday, so back on the winning track. So they continue to play really well. They're 6-6 in quad 1 games. So, they have the resume right now to show that they're a top 16 team, especially when Christian Anderson is healthy. Then next up, we get the East region with the number 1 seed here being Duke. I am not going to fault Duke too much for what occurred on Saturday. I don't think that it's going to, wreck their season. They have the most quad 1 wins right now. Currently, they're 10-2 in quad 1 games. So it's something that is to watch out for. Like they have dominated when they need to. I think that loss, hurts them. The late game situations continue to be a problem the last 2 years for Duke, and it's something that they are going to have to figure out if they want to be able to have a chance to win. Because if you can't figure out late game situations, you're not winning. You're not going to be able to win in the tournament. I know, like Florida last year, Walter Clayton in late games shined. In previous years, you have players that just know how to shine in late game moments, and you got to find that. You got to find someone that's going to be able to shine in those late game moments. You got to run better sets. I didn't really think that set was great that they ran. They got a pretty solid look. You take that look 10 times out of 10, just couldn't finish it. And then we get Illinois here. As the 2 seed, they dropped their road game to Michigan State. They've been playing really good basketball. I think they were kind of due for an L like this. Winning on the road at Michigan State is something that's very hard to do. So it doesn't really hurt them too much. So next up they have, then they're 6-4 right now in quad 1 games. So they continue to show their resume has been really good. They've had some big wins as well. And then number 3, Kansas, who is probably one of the hottest teams in the country right now, besides, Arizona and, Miami, Ohio. But they have won 7 in a row against some quality opponents. The Big 12, night in, night out, especially with those top 6 teams, has been phenomenal. So they've been, a tough team to play here. So they play at home against Arizona tonight, which should be a phenomenal game. If they can win that, they just shows how good they are. I think it's going to be a absolutely bumping tonight in Allen Fieldhouse. So this should be a great one to watch as well. And then they also have at Iowa State on Saturday, which should be an interesting one to watch out for as well. So Zona and Iowa State, things don't get easier in the Big 12 for Kansas. But if they can go 1-1 this week, that's a great week for them. This is going to be 2 great games they're going to play this week. And then as the 4 seed here, number 15 overall, I got UVA. They've won 8 of their last 9. They're 4-2 in quad 1 games. They've been very solid. I think you could put UNC here. I just don't think that UNC has the same resume. I think they're just like a little edge behind. There's 2 losses to Cal and Stanford. I think really hurts UNC. That's why I put UVA over them, even though UNC has the head-to-head. UNC has a chance to make up for it. I'll talk about them in a little bit, but yeah, I think right now UVA has just the better overall resume. They play an interesting out-of-conference game this Saturday in Nashville if they play Ohio State. Not sure how that was scheduled, but I'll have eyes on it. We'll see how that game ends up being. And then next up, we got, or at least last, we have the South region. So as I talked about before, I have Houston in this 1 seed window as the last 1 seed. That win at BYU, I think, really propelled them to be the last 1 seed here. They have been really good this year. Kingston Flemings has been absolutely phenomenal, taking on that guard role in that Houston offense. So they're 7-2 in quad 1 games. They've won 4 in a row. So they've been playing really well. And then this week, or these next 3 games for Houston, as I said, the Big 12 just continues to have just phenomenal games. Houston will play at Iowa State, against Arizona, and then at Kansas in their next 3. So there's a chance for this to kind of, maybe flip around with these seedings a little bit. Just shows you how good the Big 12 is this year, at least especially those top 6 teams. I'll just keep saying it. They're so much fun to watch those 6 teams play. So it's going to be a great 3 games for Houston. Then UConn, I dropped them a little bit more than here. I can see if you want them a little bit higher, very valid. They only have 2 losses this year. It's just a down year for the Big East, so it's just hard to be able to kind of judge them a little bit against higher tier quality opponents. They do have good wins in the non-con. I'll give them that. They have been playing really good, but that loss to St. John's hurts just a little bit. It's their first loss in 18 games. They're probably one of the hottest teams coming in. And they're 5-2 in quad 1 games, so they just don't have, the volume of quad 1 games played as a lot of these other teams have. So it's a little tough. So the next time they play St. John's, you have to have to be on the lookout for that game as well. Then you get Michigan State, who just took down Illinois on Saturday. Have them slotted here as the 3 seed, number 9 overall. They have a pretty light Big Ten schedule down the stretch, so I think that really is going to help them out. They're 6-3 currently in quad 1 games. Their biggest game left is going to be that at Michigan game. So they don't really have too much, I think, to worry about. At Indiana could also be a little scary. You don't really know what you're going to get from Indiana. They're very, 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 very reliant on the 3-point shot. So could be a scary game if they get hot as well. And here, the last team we got in here as the 4 seed, number 14 overall, is the Vanderbilt. I know they just lost at home to Oklahoma. Wasn't a great game by them. Vanderbilt's kind of slowed down for how hot of a start they had, but they're still 6-3 in quad 1 games. It's a little tough for them, but I think the next upcoming games for them are going to be big. They have a pretty, I wouldn't say it's tough as like, the Big 12, but their SEC schedule does get a little tougher, so they do have a chance to really kind of improve on that resume. Tomorrow they play at Auburn, and they have A&M on Saturday at Missouri. Missouri's been phenomenal at home, so that should be a good game. They got Tennessee, Georgia, and at Kentucky still left as well. So their schedule down the stretch is going to be one of the harder ones probably in the SEC, so you'll really get to see what Tennessee is made of. And then we have kind of what I'll call the next 4, which is basically just the 5 seed line. We get to see kind of which teams are right there. So UNC I have just out. They had that huge win against Duke this Saturday, so I think it's tough for them to be in that 4 spot for me. They're 5-4 in quad 1 games. I know they beaten Kansas, Kentucky, and Duke this year. All phenomenal. I think Kentucky's a little bit worse than they should be, even though they have been playing really good basketball as of late, but they were not very good in the first, couple months of the season. They also played Kansas, the second week of the year. Definitely a different look, Kansas, and how good they've been playing as of late. So, with a grain of salt, they have a game at Miami Wednesday or tomorrow, this week at least. I think if they win at Miami, that will probably propel them into the top 16. I just think that's kind of a sleepy game. So if UNC can get up for that game and prove me wrong, then they are very deserving of a top 4 seed, in my opinion, at least. Then it's St. John's, who've won 9 in a row, beating UConn last Friday. They've been playing some really good basketball. They're 4-4 right now in quad 1 games. Thing that is hurting their resume, as I talked about before with Gonzaga, has that same issue with, that quad 3 loss that they took earlier. It's the only loss in the Big East too. So they are fighting with UConn for, the Big East regular season. So because of that, that's why I have them so high, but they playing some good ball. They're in a battle currently as I'm recording this with Xavier in that Richard versus Rick at the Patino Bowl there in MSG. And then we get Arkansas at number 3 here. Arkansas, I think they've been really good. I know they lost to Kentucky last week. They're 7-3 in the SEC right now. They're 5-6 in quad 1 games. I just think for how tough that non-con was and playing every single Elite 8 team from last year really is going to help them out. And maybe I'm a little bit higher on them than they probably should be with that resume, but I just think it's more so, actually watching the games and seeing how good this Arkansas team is and how good Darius Acuff has been leading this team. And then the last team I have here is BYU. I can see the argument for not having them here. They've lost 4 in a row. They've been playing some pretty not so great basketball. I think their non-con kind of is what is keeping them here with some good wins there. They're 4-6 in quad 1 games, so I can see the reason for not wanting them, as this last, 5 seed technically. I wouldn't be mad about a couple teams that you could have. There's a couple other teams you can have, whether that's, Tennessee in that spot. They're 4-7 in quad 1 games. You can have Louisville in that spot. They're 4-6 in quad 1 games. BYU's 4-6 in quad 1 games. You can have Kentucky, who's been red hot as of late. No, they have 7 losses, but they're 5-6 in quad 1 games. So technically, they would have one of the higher win totals in quad one games. You could have Bama maybe. They've been playing some better basketball. I just don't want to put Bama there because of them getting Bediako. Just annoys me, even though it's shouldn't make that much of a deal. They're 6-6 in quad one games, so Bama's been playing really good basketball too. You can have, if you want, St. Louis in that spot, to have a mid-major take a 5 seed there. St. Louis is 2-0. Their only loss is a quad two loss. They lost to Stanford on an absolutely miraculous play. You should go look it up and see that's their only loss of the season, is Stanford missing a free throw, down 2. They get the ball in the corner, moon ball shot from the corner, drill a 3, win the game and win by 1 against St. Louis. That is their only loss. They've been playing phenomenal basketball. So I wouldn't hate them being up there as the 5 seed. So there's a lot of teams that can be up there. Iowa potentially is another one, but I just only being 2-4 in quad one games it kind of hurts them. I don't see them being up there. That's kind of why I just wouldn't include them. I think they're more on that 6, almost said it. They're on that 6 seed line, possibly 7 seed line. So yeah, and then kind of just to wrap it up here, give you the full picture of what this can kind of look like. Potential matchups being Arizona versus Gonzaga, Nebraska versus Florida. You get Michigan versus Texas Tech, Iowa State versus Purdue. You get Houston versus Vanderbilt, UConn versus Michigan State, Duke versus Virginia, Illinois versus Kansas, which is just phenomenal. I think with this year, it's very much different than last year and how the 1 seeds were built. Last year was like some of the most historically best 1 seeds ever. This year you have, I think, kind of a drop off. Michigan has been phenomenal. They're probably one of the best defensive teams. But, Houston and Duke have looked vulnerable at times. Iowa State has looked vulnerable. Like a lot of these teams have looked vulnerable at times. So I don't think they're at that tier of how last year was. We still have, about a month left of the season. So there's still a lot to be played out and see how teams finish off the season. God forbid if there's, any injuries or anything as well too. So just kind of seeing how those things are. But I think you can kind of see a clear drop off from the top, I want to say 10 teams. Those 10 teams have all had stretches of really good basketball, even a lot. But this year I think there will be a couple teams that might be in that 6 seed line that can make deep runs into March. So I think we're gearing up for an awesome March Madness this year. I think it's going to be a pretty unpredictable year, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of talent spread out all over the country. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it from me. Just gonna wrap it up here. I got about less than an hour before I got to go watch Indiana versus Oregon and also watch that awesome game between Arizona and Kansas, which everyone should tune in for. It's going to be rocking in Allen Fieldhouse tonight. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you everyone for tuning in for another episode here with Flashbanks. Peace, y'all.